Welcome back to the channel Coin Star and History Hunters, to the channel where ordinary pocket change turns into extraordinary treasure, and today we are diving deep into one of the most talked about and jaw-dropping coins in United States history, the 1-cent 1958 United States of American Lincoln penny, a tiny copper coin with a massive story that has stunned collectors, shaken the numismatic world and sparked endless debate, curiosity and excitement across top-viewed videos worldwide because while its face value is just 1 cent, its legendary worth has climbed to an unbelievable $786 million, and in this video we are going to explore how such a simple-looking coin could possibly reach such astronomical value, what makes it different from the billions of other pennies struck, what errors, mistakes, mint mark mysteries and once-in-a-lifetime possibilities transformed this everyday object into a coin that collectors dream about, investors chase and historians obsess over. So stay with me as we uncover the full story, from its historical roots to its controversial errors, and from its mysterious minting process to the reasons why a single 1958 penny could rewrite everything you thought you knew about money. Because the story of this coin is not just about metal, it is about rarity, chance, human error and the powerful psychology of value itself. Now, to understand why the 1958 Lincoln cent is so special, we first have to step back into the America of the late 1950s, a nation riding a wave of post-war confidence, industrial expansion and technological growth, where coins were being produced in massive quantities to keep up with a booming economy, and the Lincoln penny, a symbol of American unity and resilience, had already been in circulation for nearly 50 years by that point, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse with the familiar inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," and the wheat ears design on the reverse, which itself was nearing the end of its era, making any coin from this period historically significant but not necessarily rare at first glance. Because in 1958 the Denver Mint struck millions of pennies marked with the D Mint mark, intended to be ordinary workhorse coins for everyday transactions. However, hidden within this ocean of copper were a tiny number of coins that should never have existed at all, coins born from mistakes overlooked during quality control and created during moments when the minting process went wrong in subtle yet dramatic ways, and it is these mistakes that transformed a penny worth 1 cent into a coin potentially worth hundreds of millions. Now, one of the most important factors behind the enormous valuation of the 1958 penny is the presence of extreme mint errors, particularly double die errors, off metal strikes, wrong planchet errors and mint mark anomalies that defy standard production logic. Because the minting process, although highly controlled, is still vulnerable to human and mechanical failure, and during 1958, when production speed was prioritized over microscopic perfection, certain errors slipped through, and among these the most legendary is the dramatic double die obverse error, where elements like "Liberty," "the date" and "In God We Trust" appear doubled, sometimes visibly to the naked eye, a result of misaligned dies during the hubbing process. And while minor doubling is not uncommon, a strong, crisp and clearly separated double die on a 1958 penny is exceptionally rare, because Denver Mint coins were not supposed to show this level of doubling during that year, making any confirmed example a numismatic anomaly. And when such an error is combined with pristine condition, the value does not increase linearly, it explodes exponentially, especially when collectors realize how few examples exist. Now add to this the possibility of a wrong metal composition, because during the late 1950s the U.S. Mint was experimenting with different alloys and planchets, and although official records do not widely acknowledge alternative metals for 1958 pennies, rumors and private discoveries have suggested the existence of transitional planchets or experimental blanks struck accidentally with the 1958 design, including coins struck on silver-colored planchets, bronze alloys of unusual purity, or even foreign planchets intended for other denominations. And if a 1958 penny were conclusively authenticated as being struck on an unauthorized metal, the rarity would be so extreme that it would fall into a category of one, meaning there may be no other coin like it in existence, and collectors place unimaginable value on uniqueness, because when something cannot be replaced, its price becomes whatever someone is willing to pay. And when billionaires, museums and private foundations compete for ownership, prices soar into territories that sound impossible to the average person, and this is where the staggering figure of $786 million enters the conversation, because the valuation is not about copper alone, it is about the convergence of absolute rarity, historical mystery and collector psychology. Now, another crucial factor that elevates the 1958 penny into legend status is the mint mark itself, because the D Mint mark signifies Denver, and while Denver produced many coins, the quality control processes differed slightly from Philadelphia and San Francisco, and certain years saw unique mint mark placements, shapes and sizes, and in rare cases Mispunched or repunched mint marks where the D appears double tilted, rotated, or even partially missing, and these mint mark errors are highly prized, especially when combined with other anomalies, because they confirm that the coin did not simply suffer wear or damage after circulation but was flawed at the very moment of its creation. And mint mark errors are like fingerprints of the mint, revealing moments of imperfection frozen in time, and when a 1958 D penny shows a dramatic mint mark error, along with a double die obverse or reverse, the rarity multiplies again, and collectors understand that the odds of multiple independent errors appearing on a single coin are astronomically low, making such pieces the ultimate jackpot. Find now condition is another pillar of value, because even the rarest error means less if the coin is heavily worn, scratched, or damaged. But when a 1958 D penny survives in mint state condition with original luster, sharp strike, full detail, and no post-mint damage, its value leaps forward, and if it reaches the highest grading levels where professional grading services certify it as nearly perfect, the population count may drop to just 1 or 2 known examples worldwide. And population reports are critical in the numismatic market, because scarcity is measured not only by how many were made but how many still exist and how many are known, and if the population is 1, then the market essentially has no ceiling. And this is why stories circulate of a single 1958 D penny being theoretically valued at $786 million, because if only one such coin exists with a specific combination of errors, metal composition, and flawless condition, then its worth is no longer tied to typical coin pricing guides but to elite private negotiations behind closed doors. Now we also have to consider the power of narrative, because value is driven not just by metal and mistakes but by story, and the story of the 1958 D penny is compelling because it sits at the crossroads of the end of the wheat cent era, the Cold War industrial push, and the hidden experimental practices of the U.S. Mint. And when collectors believe a coin represents a secret chapter of history, an accident that reveals how the mint really operated behind the scenes, they assign immense emotional value to that object, and emotion fuels markets as much as logic. And when top-viewed videos discuss the possibility of a penny being worth hundreds of millions, it captures public imagination and brings new eyes into the hobby, which in turn increases demand, because suddenly everyone wants to believe they might have a fortune hiding in a jar. And while most 1958 D pennies are worth only a few cents, the dream that one could be different keeps the market alive and thriving, and it is this dream that drives people to examine dates, mint marks, lettering, spacing, die alignment, thickness, weight, and metal color under magnification, hoping to discover something extraordinary. Now another layer of intrigue comes from so-called mule errors, where the obverse and reverse dies do not match as intended, and while extremely rare in sense, a mule involving a 1958 D obverse paired with an incorrect reverse design or die from a different year or denomination would be among the most sensational discoveries in numismatic history, because such an error challenges everything we know about minting controls, and if such a coin were proven authentic, its value would reach unprecedented levels, potentially validating figures like $786 million, especially if it is the only known example, because museums, governments, and private collectors would all want to own such a piece, and ownership becomes a matter of prestige rather than profit. Now we must also talk about strike anomalies such as broad strikes, off-center strikes, double strikes, and capped dies, which can create dramatic visual effects where the design is distorted, elongated, or repeated. And while many off-center strikes exist, a perfectly centered dramatic error with full date, mint mark, and inscriptions intact is far rarer. And when such an error occurs on a key date like the 1958 D and is preserved in pristine condition, it again adds another multiplier to the value equation, because collectors prize coins that clearly display the way you look at the smallest coin in your pocket. As we dive together into one of the most fascinating and talked about pieces in American coin history, the 1 cent 1959 D United States of America coin, a Lincoln cent that on the surface looks ordinary, copper-colored, modest, and humble, yet beneath that simple appearance lies a story so dramatic, mysterious, and potentially life-changing that collectors around the world continue to chase it with passion, obsession, and sometimes disbelief. Because this is not just a penny, it is a symbol of history, error, rarity, and the wild possibilities of the coin collecting world, where a face value of 1 cent can, under extraordinary circumstances, transform into a jaw-dropping valuation whispered to reach up to $788 million. And today we're going to explore exactly why this coin, especially certain rare examples from the Denver Mint marked with the iconic D mint mark, stands so far apart from everyday pocket change, and why millions of people search their old jars, inherited collections, and forgotten drawers hoping to uncover this exact cent, because the year 1959 itself marks a historic turning point in American coinage, as it was the first year the Lincoln Memorial design replaced the long-running wheat reverse, symbolizing a new era for the United States Mint and setting the stage for some of the most intriguing minting anomalies ever recorded. And when a major design change meets massive production numbers, new dies, experimental processes, and human error, the result can be coins that defy expectations, and the 1959 Lincoln cent sits right at the crossroads of that transformation, struck at the Denver Mint during a time when millions upon millions of cents were being produced to meet national demand, increasing the chances for die clashes, hub doubling, misaligned strikes, off-metal errors, and mint mark irregularities that would later become the stuff of legend among collectors, because while the vast majority of 1959 cents are common and worth only a few cents to a dollar depending on condition, a tiny fraction emerged with mistakes so extreme and unusual that they rewrote the rulebook of what a penny could be worth, and this is where the story becomes electrifying, because collectors know that value is driven not by what a coin is supposed to be, but by what it accidentally became. And in the case of the 1959 cent, documented reports and whispered private transactions have fueled the idea that a perfect storm of errors could push a single example into the realm of ultra-high-value collectibles, especially when those errors combine multiple anomalies on one coin, such as dramatic double dies where Lincoln's profile appears thick, ghosted, or doubled, with inscriptions like Liberty and In God We Trust showing noticeable separation or shadowing that isn't the result of wear but of hub doubling during the die creation process, a mistake that locks the error into every coin struck by that die until it is discovered and removed. And when such doubling is strong, crisp, and paired with a rare mint mark anomaly, the desirability skyrockets, because mint marks in 1959 were still punched into the dies by hand, meaning no two mint marks were exactly alike, opening the door to overpunched de-mint marks, misplaced mint marks, repunched mint marks, or even mint marks that appear rotated, tilted, or partially missing, each variation telling a story of hurried production and imperfect alignment inside the Denver Mint. And now imagine a single coin that displays bold doubling on Lincoln's features, clear doubling on the lettering, a dramatic repunched de-mint mark, and possibly even signs of a die crack or die break running through the design like a lightning bolt, instantly marking it as something far beyond normal circulation coinage, because these visible errors aren't damage. They are fingerprints of the minting process itself, and collectors pay extraordinary premiums for coins that can clearly demonstrate how and where the mint went wrong, and the 1959 cent is especially powerful in this regard because of its historical context, being the first memorial reverse cent, which already grants it a special place in U.S. numismatics, but errors elevate it from historical to legendary, and then comes the tantalizing possibility of off-metal strikes, where a 1959 cent could have been accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or metal composition, such as bronze blanks of incorrect weight, experimental alloy blanks, or even foreign planchets mistakenly fed into the presses, resulting in a cent that weighs differently, sounds different when dropped, and appears wrong in color or thickness. And when such an off-metal error is authenticated and paired with the correct date and mint mark, its value can explode, not because it was meant to exist, but because it was never meant to exist at all, making it a unique survivor of a manufacturing slip that escaped into circulation. And the more dramatic the deviation from the standard, the more intense the collector interest becomes, especially when the coin remains in high-grade condition with minimal wear, strong luster, and sharp details, because condition amplifies rarity, and rarity amplifies desire, creating a feedback loop where price is driven upward by competition among elite collectors who want not just a rare coin, but the rarest version of that coin. And this is where stories of astronomical values like $788 million begin to circulate, not as everyday auction results, but as theoretical peak valuations for a hypothetical perfect specimen that combines extreme rarity, historical importance, flawless preservation, and documented provenance, because provenance matters deeply in high-end numismatics. And if a legendary 1959 error cent were traced back through reputable collections, certified by top grading services, and referenced in major numismatic publications, its value would be limited only by how badly the world's wealthiest collectors wanted to own a piece of American minting mythology. And the Lincoln cent, featuring Abraham Lincoln, one of the most revered figures in U.S. history, adds emotional gravity to the equation, because collectors are not just buying copper and errors. They are buying a tangible connection to the past, a small artifact that passed through hands during the Cold War era, during a time of national optimism and industrial power, and when you hold a 1959 D cent, you are holding a snapshot of that moment, frozen in metal, but when that snapshot is distorted by errors, it becomes art, history, and anomaly combined, and collectors love anomalies, because they prove that even the most controlled industrial processes are still subject to chance. And those moments of chance are where the biggest stories are born, and let's not forget die variety collectors who study subtle differences between dies used in the same year and mint, searching for minute changes in lettering thickness, spacing, and alignment, because even small variations can create recognized varieties that command significant premiums, especially when they are scarce and difficult to find, and the 1959 D cent has been scrutinized for decades, with specialists cataloging known varieties and still debating the existence of undiscovered ones, because millions of these coins were struck, yet relatively few have been examined under magnification by knowledgeable eyes, meaning that treasures could still be hiding in plain sight, sitting in old rolls, estate collections, or even circulation, waiting for someone to notice that something feels off, something looks doubled, something doesn't match the reference images, and that possibility keeps the hunt alive, because coin collecting at its heart is about discovery, the thrill of finding something overlooked, undervalued, or misunderstood, and when stories circulate of a penny potentially worth hundreds of millions due to extreme errors and singular characteristics, it sparks imagination, curiosity, and action, pushing people to learn, inspect, and appreciate the complexity of minting history. And while not every 1959 D cent will change a life, the idea that one could is powerful enough to keep collectors engaged for a lifetime. And that's why the face value of 1 cent is almost irrelevant in this discussion, because face value measures spending power, not significance, and significance is measured in rarity, story, and demand, and the difference between 1 cent and hundreds of millions of dollars is not exaggeration for effect, but a reflection of how markets reward uniqueness, because in numismatics, the rarest objects don't just sell for money, they become trophies, and the 1959 D Lincoln cent, when transformed by errors, mistakes, and mint mark anomalies, becomes exactly that, a trophy of chance, history, and craftsmanship gone imperfectly perfect, reminding us that sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest surprises, and that the next legendary coin could already be in existence, quietly waiting for recognition. And if this story sparks even a flicker of curiosity in you, that curiosity alone is part of the legacy of the 1959 D 1 cent coin. A tiny piece of copper that proves value is not always what it seems, and if you want this story to continue with even deeper dives into specific error types, historical comparisons, and how collectors authenticate and evaluate coins like this, that journey can go on, because the world of coins is vast, layered, and endlessly surprising, all starting from something as simple as a penny. Day, because what you are about to hear might completely change the way you look at a simple small copper coin that almost everyone has held in their hands at some point in life. Today we are diving deep into the fascinating, unbelievable, and sometimes controversial story of the 1 cent 1960 D United States of American coin. A Lincoln penny that on the surface looks ordinary carries Abraham Lincoln on the front and the familiar wheat or memorial design era feel, yet according to collectors, legends, error coin hunters, and viral top views video discussions has been whispered to be worth an astonishing $999 million under extremely rare circumstances, a number that sounds impossible for a coin with a face value of just 1 cent. And yet the reason this coin has captured so much attention across YouTube search trends, collector forums, and late-night coin roll hunting videos is because of the wild combination of history, minting circumstances, dramatic errors, rare mint mark issues, and once-in-a-lifetime possibilities that together create a perfect storm of value, imagination, speculation, and obsession that refuses to die. The year 1960 itself is already important in United States coin history because it sits right in the middle of massive transitions at the U.S. Mint, including changes in hub designs, master dies, working dies, and quality control standards. The Denver Mint, marked by the small but powerful D mint mark, was producing millions upon millions of pennies at a rapid speed to meet circulation demand, and whenever speed, pressure, and mass production collide with human hands, machinery tolerances, and metal inconsistencies, the door opens for mistakes, and it is inside those mistakes that legends are born, the 1960D cent is known to exist in multiple varieties including small date and large date styles. Repunched mint marks, subtle double dies, die cracks, die breaks, off-center strikes, broad strikes and transitional anomalies connected to planchet composition and die wear, and while most examples are worth only a few cents to a few dollars depending on condition, there are stories supported by rare auction whispers and collector mythology that certain extreme error versions, if proven unique, authenticated and historically unmatched, could reach values that explode beyond normal logic, pushing into the realm of hundreds of millions and in extreme storytelling even approaching the mythical $999 million valuation that fuels viral titles and endless curiosity. The foundation of this value argument begins with the Lincoln portrait itself, because any major doubling or distortion on Lincoln's face, date or inscriptions caused by hub doubling or misaligned dies creates an instant premium. But the 1960 era is especially sensitive because the master hub for that year went through subtle changes, and when those changes collide with old dies reused or improperly aligned, the resulting double die can show dramatic separation on the date, the word liberty and the famous "In God We Trust" motto. And when the Denver Mint mark itself is involved, things escalate dramatically because the D Mint mark during that period was hand punched into each die, meaning it could be punched more than once, crooked, shifted, tilted or even struck over another mint mark, leaving behind repunched or doubled mint mark errors. And mint mark errors are among the most emotionally powerful features for collectors because they visually prove human involvement and uniqueness. One of the most talked about possibilities with the 1960D is an extreme repunched mint mark paired with a doubled die obverse where both the design and the mint mark show dramatic doubling visible even to the naked eye. Such a coin, if found in pristine uncirculated or proof-like condition, could already reach life-changing money in the legitimate market. But the leap to legendary valuation comes when additional layers of error are added. Imagine a 1960D penny struck on the wrong planchet, such as a silver planchet intended for a dime or an experimental alloy test piece accidentally fed into the penny presses. Errors like that have historically produced some of the most valuable U.S. coins ever sold. Now combine that wrong planchet error with dramatic doubling, a repunched mint mark and an off-center strike that still shows the full date and mint mark. At that point the coin stops being just an error and becomes a singular artifact of chaos inside the mint, the kind of object museums dream of and collectors obsess over for decades. And when only one example is known or believed to exist, value is no longer controlled by price guides but by desire, competition, ego and storytelling. This is where the $999 million narrative comes alive, not as a guaranteed sale price but as a symbolic ceiling representing infinite rarity. Because in the world of ultra-rare coins the most valuable factor is not metal content, not age, not face value, but uniqueness combined with historical credibility. The 1960D penny exists at the crossroads of that credibility because documentation from that era confirms heavy production pressure, die reuse and known errors, opening the door to possibilities that still may not have been fully discovered. Another layer that adds fuel to the fire is the small date versus large date controversy, where subtle differences in the shape of the numbers, especially the 0 and the tail of the 9, create two distinct varieties. Collectors know that whenever varieties exist, mistakes multiply. There is speculation in advanced circles about transitional dies where elements of both date styles appear on the same coin, a mule-like hybrid date that should not exist according to official records. If such a coin were confirmed with a D mint mark, authentic surfaces and matching die markers, it would immediately rewrite reference books, and rewritten books mean new values. Now add to that speculation the concept of die caps. Capped dies can repeatedly strike planchets, creating ghostly mirror-like distorted impressions, and if a capped die occurred briefly during 1960 at Denver and then broke, leaving behind only one or two usable strikes, those coins would be beyond rare. Now imagine that one of those strikes happened on a wrong planchet with a double die and repunched mint mark. Suddenly we are no longer talking about normal collecting, we are talking about a coin that represents a statistical anomaly bordering on impossible, yet history has proven impossible coins do appear. The 1943 copper cent, the 1955 double die, the 1974 aluminum cent, all examples of mistakes that were never meant to exist yet now command millions, and that historical precedent is what keeps hope alive for the 1960D legend. Another reason this coin dominates top views video discussions is the accessibility illusion, because millions of people believe they might already own one sitting in a jar, drawer or inherited collection. That emotional hook is powerful. Unlike gold coins locked in vaults, the penny is democratic, anyone can search for it, and that keeps the dream alive. Collectors also speculate about mint mark position anomalies where the D is placed unusually high, low, or tilted. These can indicate the use of experimental dies or manual correction attempts. And in extreme cases, the mint mark could even be partially missing or ghosted, suggesting grease-filled dies or incomplete punches. Errors like missing or weak mint marks when paired with otherwise sharp strikes are incredibly desirable because they challenge the standard classification rules, and every challenge to the rules pushes value higher. The metal itself also matters. While 1960 pennies are officially bronze, there are theories and anecdotal reports of transitional alloy contamination from leftover planchets from experimental batches or foreign blanks accidentally mixed into the hoppers. Even a slight deviation in weight composition or magnetic response can elevate a coin from curiosity to world-class specimen. Authentication becomes critical at this level, and coins rumored to approach $999 million would require confirmation from multiple top grading services: metallurgical analysis, die study, and provenance tracing. But again, value at that height is not only about science but narrative. Museums, corporations, and private billionaires pay for stories, and a 1-cent coin that symbolizes the chaos, creativity, and imperfection of a superpower's minting process during a booming era is a powerful story. Imagine presenting such a coin as the most valuable penny ever created, a coin that defies logic, mocks inflation, and turns 1 cent into near $1 billion. The publicity alone would be priceless. That is why videos about the 1960D penny rack up massive views, because they promise transformation, hope, shock, and disbelief, all wrapped in a familiar object. The Lincoln design itself amplifies the effect because Lincoln is not just a president but a symbol of unity, struggle, and legacy. Attaching that symbolism to an era coin multiplies emotional value. Some collectors argue the $999 million figure is exaggerated clickbait, while others counter that the true ceiling for a unique, irreplaceable artifact is theoretically infinite if the right buyer decides it represents something greater than money. Art collectors pay similar sums for singular paintings and sculptures. Why not a coin that represents a nation's monetary heartbeat? The market for extreme numismatic trophies has grown alongside wealth inequality and alternative investments, and a coin like the ultimate 1960D error would not be purchased as currency but as a cultural relic. Where ordinary pocket change can turn into extraordinary treasure, and in today's video we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating, controversial, and talked about coins in United States history, the 1 cent 1964D United States of American Liberty coin, a coin that on the surface looks like a simple Lincoln penny with a face value of just 1 cent. But beneath that copper surface lies a storm of mystery, rare possibilities, minting anomalies, errors, mint mark confusion, historical what-ifs, and collector demand so intense that some experts and collectors speculate values reaching as high as $1,000 million under extreme and extraordinary circumstances, making this coin a perfect example of how a tiny piece of metal can carry massive stories, fortunes, and dreams. And as you listen closely today, you'll understand why the 1964D 1 cent coin is not just about money but about history, mistakes, rarity, and the human factor behind the minting process, because the year 1964 itself holds a special place in American coinage history, being a turning point era when the United States Mint was under massive pressure due to coin shortages, rising metal prices, and public hoarding, a time when the Lincoln cent was produced in enormous numbers but also under rushed and stressed conditions, especially at the Denver Mint, represented by the D mint mark. And it is during such stressful production periods that some of the most valuable errors and varieties are born, because machines wear down faster, dies crack, get repolished incorrectly, mint marks are punched or positioned inconsistently, and planchets sometimes slip through that were never meant to be used for circulation, and all of this sets the stage for why a 1964D 1 cent coin can exist in forms that completely defy its 1 cent face value. Because while millions upon millions of standard 1964D Lincoln cents were struck, only a microscopic fraction fall into the category of rare error coins, transitional errors, or experimental pieces, and it is those rare survivors that drive collectors crazy, pushing competition, speculation, and valuation to levels that seem unreal to the average person, especially when you understand that 1964 was at the edge of significant metal composition debates, with copper prices rising and the mint already testing different alloys behind the scenes, opening the door for off-metal strikes, wrong planchet errors, and unusual weight and thickness. Anomalies that immediately catch the attention of professional graders and elite collectors, and when we talk about the liberty aspect of this coin, we are talking about the powerful symbolism engraved into the design itself, with Abraham Lincoln's profile representing freedom, unity, and resilience, and the word liberty appearing boldly yet quietly on the obverse, reminding us that this tiny coin carries national identity, and when that identity is paired with a minting mistake or rare feature, the value shifts from patriotic symbolism to historical artifact status, which is exactly what happens with some 1964 1-cent coins that show dramatic double dies, where the lettering, date, or even Lincoln's profile appears doubled due to misalignment during the die creation process, and these double die errors are not post-mint damage but true mint errors, meaning they were created at the source, giving them legitimacy and extreme desirability, especially when the doubling is strong, clear, and unambiguous, because collectors pay premiums for clarity, and strong double dies from key years can trigger bidding wars at auction, especially when combined with pristine condition or uncirculated preservation. And speaking of condition, the survival rate of flawless 1964 cents is surprisingly low relative to the total mintage, because most were heavily circulated, tossed into jars, wallets, cash registers, and parking meters for decades, suffering scratches, corrosion, and wear. Meaning high-grade examples with full luster, sharp strike, and original surfaces are far rarer than the raw mintage numbers suggest, and rarity in high grade is one of the most important drivers of extreme valuation, especially when tied to known error varieties, because a flawless error coin is the holy grail of numismatics, and then there are mint mark errors, which add another layer of intrigue to the 1964 1-cent story, because during this era mint marks were hand-punched into the working dies, meaning human error played a huge role, resulting in repunched mint marks, tilted mint marks, weak mint marks, or even missing mint marks due to overpolishing of the die, and while a missing D mint mark on a 1964 cent can spark debates about whether it was struck in Philadelphia or Denver, the ambiguity itself adds fascination, especially if the coin exhibits Denver-specific die characteristics while lacking the mint mark, creating a numismatic puzzle that experts love to analyze. And puzzles are valuable, because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying stories, mysteries, and the thrill of discovery, and this brings us to the concept of transitional errors, which are among the most valuable possibilities for a 1964 1-cent, because transitional errors occur when a coin is struck using materials or dies intended for a different year, composition, or denomination, and although officially the Lincoln cent remained a bronze composition until later years, the mid-1960s saw intense experimentation, meaning the theoretical existence of a 1964 cent struck on an experimental planchet cannot be completely dismissed, and if such a coin were to surface with undeniable proof, verified by metallurgical analysis and third-party grading, its value would instantly skyrocket into legendary territory, possibly reaching valuations in the hundreds of millions or even approaching $1,000 million, not because of gold or silver content, but because of historical uniqueness, provenance, and the once-in-a-lifetime nature of such a discovery, and collectors are willing to pay absurd sums for singular pieces, especially when museums, private investors, and institutions compete, driving prices far beyond logical limits, because at that level, coins are no longer currency but cultural artifacts, and then there are die errors such as die cracks, die breaks, cuds, and retained cuds, which are especially dramatic on 1964 cents due to high speed production and die fatigue, and large cuds that distort the rim or design can make a coin visually stunning, and visual impact matters in top views viral content because collectors and viewers alike are drawn to coins that look obviously different, coins that jump out on camera, and when such visually dramatic errors are paired with rarity and authentication, they can sell for astronomical amounts. And we cannot ignore the role of public fascination and viral exposure, because in the modern age, a coin's value is influenced not just by traditional numismatics but by media, online auctions, and social platforms where a single viral video can ignite global interest, drawing new collectors into the market and amplifying demand overnight, and a 1964 1-cent with a shocking error showcased in a top views video can become an overnight sensation, with offers pouring in from around the world, pushing speculative values higher and higher, and speculation is powerful, because when people believe a coin could be worth $1 billion, even if only under extreme conditions, That belief alone fuels intense competition, and competition is what drives record-breaking prices, and beyond errors and mint marks, strike quality plays a huge role, because some 1964 D cents were struck with exceptional sharpness, full detail in Lincoln's hair, crisp lettering, and blazing red luster. And when preserved in original condition, these coins can grade at the highest levels, and top population. Coins in grading registries become trophies, with collectors paying obscene premiums just to own the best-known example, and when a best-known example also carries a rare error or unique attribute, the valuation enters a realm that seems unbelievable to outsiders, and this is how a 1-cent coin becomes a symbol of $1,000 million possibility, not because every 1964 D cent is worth that amount, but because the right coin, with the right combination of rarity, condition, error, story, and timing, can transcend its humble origins. And timing is crucial, because the coin market is cyclical, and when interest in Lincoln cents surges, prices explode, and we are seeing renewed interest driven by nostalgia, economic uncertainty, and the human desire to find value in the ordinary, and the 1964 D cent sits perfectly at the intersection of history and accessibility, because millions of people may unknowingly possess one, fueling the dream that anyone could strike it rich by checking their change, and dreams are powerful. And finally, we must talk about the psychology of value, because a coin is only worth what someone is willing to pay, and at the extreme end of the market, buyers are not driven by necessity but by prestige, legacy, and exclusivity, and owning a legendary 1964 D 1-cent error coin would place someone in an elite circle, granting them recognition in numismatic history books, museum displays, and future generations, and that kind of legacy is priceless to some, making a billion-dollar valuation not as crazy as it sounds when you consider the motivations of ultra-wealthy collectors, institutions, and investors, and this is why the 1964 D United States of American Liberty 1-cent coin continues to capture imagination, conversation, and obsession.